What does Sword Art Online and Solo Leveling have in common? Both series focus on a loser with dark hair with a sister figure coupled with a sad backstory who becomes crazy strong through an RPG-style leveling system and prefers dual-wielding weapons. That might be where the comparisons end for most people, but that's where you're wrong. The comparisons extend beyond the character's background and accomplishments. The way I see it, Solo Leveling is a spiritual successor to Sword Art Online when it comes to its impact on the anime industry. Solo Leveling is a modern age pioneer for the power fantasy genre, similar to Sword Art Online for the isekai genre. Let's take a look at the reasoning behind the comparison, starting with the trajectory of Solo Leveling. Season 1 of Solo Leveling was the most watched new anime of 2024, beating out competing titles like and Kaiju Number 8. In fact, Season 1 was awarded 6 titles at Crunchyroll's The Anime Awards, including Anime of the Year. To say the win is controversial is an understatement. A lot of people are calling it a popularity contest, but we'll get into that later. For now, let's take things one step at a time. Off the success of the first season, I wouldn't be surprised to see Season 2 doing equally as well or even better, winning more awards in the coming year. It's already the most popular anime of the winter 2025 season, and will probably be one of the most popular titles of the year. It's hard to deny the success of the series as its popularity continues to grow. Everything that is happening with this series reminds me a lot of Sword Art Online back in 2012. It's crazy to think it's been 13 years since Sword Art Online came out. Making this video was a trip down memory lane. I'm probably gonna rewatch the show and catch up to the recent seasons after this. There's a good chance that a decent amount of the people who watched Solo Leveling were babies or not even born when Sword Art Online came out. If you are one of those people who have watched Sword Art Online, let me know in the comments. And even if you haven't watched it, I'm sure you still know what the show is. Before Sung Jin Woo was aura farming with his dual daggers, we had Kirito and his dual wielding swords. That recognition is a major reason why we're having a discussion between these two shows. In order to compare these two, we have to start with Sword Art Online as a baseline and see how popular it really was, along with the reasons behind that and how all of that relates back to Solo Leveling. Sword Art Online was a cultural phenomenon when it aired back in 2012. It is one of the most influential animes of the decade. It has inspired a generation of anime watchers and shaped the anime industry with its popularity. Let's take the first opening as an example. Lisa also sang the opening for Season 2 of Solo Leveling, but Crossing Field will always be one of her most popular songs. I'd go as far as to say it's one of the most popular anime openings of all time. I'm sure even those who haven't watched Sword Art Online will have heard of the song, especially since it's in those videos and playlists titled Best Anime Openings of All Time. And it's not just about the opening theme. The show itself was awarded Best Original Story and the TV category award at the 2013 Tokyo Anime Awards. This show rose to global stardom during a time when anime wasn't as widely accepted as it is today. You would have been the weird kid 10 years ago if you mentioned you watch anime, but nowadays a lot of the younger generation have probably seen 1 or 2 shows. But that's besides the point. The light novel was also the best-selling light novel of 2012 and 2013 and has continued to stay towards the top of the charts for many years. During that same time period, it was impossible to walk around any anime convention and not see anyone cosplaying as someone from the show. You can probably still find people cosplaying as some of the newer season's characters today. The popularity of the series led to multiple video game adaptations, movies, spin-offs, and sequels. A game came out just last year, and light novels of the original, Gun Gale Online, and Progressive are still coming out. Now that we have a general idea of how popular it was, it's time to talk about the most impactful thing that came out of Sword Art Online. And it's how it popularized the isekai genre. I think it would be fair to say that Sword Art Online was the start of the isekai era of anime. It is by no means the first series to be considered an isekai, but like the if you die in game, you die in real life trope, SAO really popularized the genre. It had a simple premise that anime fans are already familiar with: video games. MMORPGs were a really popular genre of games. It also coincided with the rise of VR technology. The tech in the sci-fi movies was finally becoming a reality, so it really helped pique people's interest. Technically, there's the virtual boy, but we don't talk about that. The main character was also easy to relate to because he was just an ordinary nerdy guy who liked to play video games. The story itself had a great hook with the trope we talked about earlier. The plot made it easy to follow and was something that you can watch and enjoy without having to think about the hidden meaning behind everything. Why do you think that after all these years, people still recommend Sword Art Online as a good starter anime for people looking to get into it? It might not be their first suggestion anymore because there are a lot of good shows nowadays, but it's easy to get into and it's a classic. All those factors combined was what made the series explode in popularity, reaching new audiences on a global scale. The release of Sword Art Online was like the opening of Pandora's box. Ever since SAO came out, each seasonal period contains at least one isekai anime. I compared it to Pandora's box because it also released some not so good shows to the world. Looking at you, vending machine isekai. Okay, to be fair, the reviews for that show aren't all bad. That being said, most of the isekai shows nowadays are actually just slop though. There are so many shows that are about some OP ex-demon lord reincarnated into some sage's grandson. It's isekai with some elements of power fantasy mixed in. I consider these a subgenre of isekai rather than a full-on power fantasy though. What do you guys think? Are they more isekai or more power fantasy? The problem with these isekai is that they get stale really quickly. Cookie cutter MCs and a storyline that drops off significantly after a couple episodes. But that's just how trends are. People enjoy a certain thing, creators make more of that thing because they know it sells. It's simple supply and demand. It's just not realistic to expect a masterpiece out of every isekai anime, especially with how many there are out there. To give credit where credit is due, there are isekai that have been innovators and rated very highly. Shows like Slime Isekai, Re:Zero, and Konosuba just to name a few. So now that we understand the cultural impact that Sword Art Online has had, let's move on to Solo Leveling. When it comes to Solo Leveling, we can see a lot of parallels between the two. It's following the same trajectory in terms of its popularity. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's the most watched new anime of 2024 and it's already won many awards as a rookie. I'm sure Season 2 will win some more as well. I will say, I haven't seen that many cosplays of Sung Jin-woo around, but there are plenty of Arise memes to make up for that. And speaking of Arise, that's the name of the mobile game based on the series. It's not a full-fledged console or PC video game adaptation, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one in the future. Well, as I was recording this, I saw the news of Solo Leveling Arise Overdrive. To clear things up, this is the mobile game I was talking about, but ported to Xbox and features 4-player co-op. Irony from the series called Solo Leveling, if you ask me. I guess you can argue it's a console game now. I'm curious what people think, whether it's a mobile game or do you think it's a console game? Anyway, back to the video. As for spin-offs and sequels, Solo Leveling Ragnarok has been in serialization since 2023, which serves as both the spin-off and the sequel. Everything I've mentioned so far has been the surface level stuff. Now let's talk about why I think Solo Leveling will have the same impact on the anime industry like Sword Art Online did many years ago. I believe Solo Leveling will be the breakthrough for the Korean industry when it comes to power fantasy series. Like SAO, Solo Leveling is by no means the first power fantasy anime nor the first adaptation of a Korean manhwa. Series like Tower of God, Noblesse, and God of High School have been recent adaptations with moderate success, but none of them had the same popularity and appeal like Solo Leveling has. It's already to a point where this show is already being recommended as a good starter anime, not to mention the awards it has been breaking. Taking a step back, let's talk about the power fantasy animes that came before Solo Leveling. A great example that comes to mind that is both popular and has a broad appeal would be One Punch Man. Okay. Shows like the Slime Isekai would fit as well, which is both a power fantasy and part of the isekai subgenre I was talking about. But One Punch Man recently got a trailer for Season 3, so I thought it would be relevant. So what's so different about Solo Leveling and the Korean power fantasies and their Japanese counterparts? It lies in the tone of the story. Japanese shows tend to be more lighthearted in their tone. While action is a core part of these existing shows, the Korean industry takes it to another level. That is not to say the Korean series don't have its lighthearted moments.
兄貴ハンさんは未成年ですだったら
But these two cultures clearly have different focuses on storytelling. Solo Leveling and its peers take themselves very seriously, in a good way. Another way the Korean industry differs from the Japanese has to do with the art direction. Pick up any Japanese manga and then the Korean one, and just by looking at the cover art, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The Japanese style favors characters with softer features, with a focus on female characters when it comes to fan service. Korean designs are slimmer and more mature with a preference towards male characters. Let's take the Solo Leveling anime as an example. Cha Hae-in looks very different in the original drawn by a Korean artist versus her appearance in the anime by a Japanese studio. I am aware not all anime adaptations are one-to-one with the original design, but I think we all know why this change was made. But we're not here to debate the pros and cons of the cultural differences between the two groups. Regardless of the changes, the art direction of Korean series brings something new to the table for existing demographics. The art direction and quality of animation is a big reason why the show is so popular. But I think the biggest draw comes in the form of how unapologetically the show focuses on aura and hype moments. Actions and fights are placed front and center. It doesn't pretend to have a convoluted plot. The beginning was used to hook the viewers in, and then everything after has been pretty straightforward. This easy to follow plot and flashy fights are the reason why the show is so popular. So why am I talking about all of this? I thought we were trying to compare the similarities between the two shows. There were certain conditions that had to be met in order for Sword Art Online to become a pioneer for its genre. The same conditions are being met here with Solo Leveling. The power fantasy boom is already happening in the Korean industry. It's making its way onto the global stage slowly but surely. The way this genre is being presented is fresh and exciting for much of the global audience, so the market is there. And because of the success of Solo Leveling, I expect more Korean series to be picked up by Japanese anime studios. I suspect that we'll also see the subgenre of regressor-focused power fantasies rise in popularity, similar to the effect Sword Art Online had with the reincarnation subgenre for isekai. We focus on the popularity and success of both series, but there's always another side to the story. When it comes to any piece of media, there will be dissenting opinions. Positive interactions are just one side of the community perception coin. The more popular the anime is, the more attention it will attract, which means these shows will fall under the scrutiny of many more eyes. Sword Art Online went through a honeymoon phase early in its release, but just like the name suggests, it doesn't last forever. I don't think it needs to be said that despite the achievements and the pioneering SAO did for the isekai genre, it has also been met with countless criticism. The transition to Alfheim Online and then moving on to Gun Gale Online in Season 2 was when the opinions started to tip towards the other side. Overrated was the most common thing being thrown around, how Kirito isn't an interesting character. The show's departure from the well-received first arc, the development of side characters, and inconsistent pacing are just some of the examples of negative comments that's been floating around since the show first aired. And some of these claims are legitimate criticisms. I don't think Sword Art Online is the perfect anime. Same with Solo Leveling. There are valid criticisms for that show as well. But that shouldn't stop anyone from enjoying either of these shows. And just like Sword Art Online, Solo Leveling has been going through its honeymoon phase. Now that we are 2 seasons in, and as someone who has read the series, I think we're about to reach the end of that honeymoon phase. With Season 3 on the horizon, I think opinions will be shifting towards the other side. We can already see the beginning of the shift. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned the Crunchyroll Anime Awards. Almost everyone was upset about the fact that it won Anime of the Year. And by everyone, I mean even people on the Solo Leveling subreddit were saying Frieren deserved it more. To go over the situation quickly, the Anime Awards votes are weighted 70-30. 70% judges and 30% fans, which might be considered high if you compare it to the Game Awards at 10%. I bring this up because the Anime Awards obviously takes inspiration from the Game Awards by making themselves sound more official and the premier anime award show. Otherwise, they would have just stuck with the name the Crunchyroll Awards. I see this as a classic case of recency bias and winning based on popularity. An argument could be made that since Solo Leveling is Crunchyroll's child, there might be some favoritism there as well. And if you want to argue that you enjoyed Solo Leveling and thought it deserved the win, that's fine. We'll talk about that later. So that's the situation with the anime awards. Now let's get back to talking about the anime. As we can see, we're already seeing the beginning of the end of this honeymoon phase with this situation. Award show controversies aside, the story will also be another topic of contention moving forward. We know this series is unapologetic about being a power fantasy focused on hype, and it does really well. But we can't expect everyone to have the same opinion or preferences. Aura can only carry you so far. With so much time in the spotlight this show has been getting, it's impossible to not receive any negative comments on the story itself. I'm not saying Season 3 will be a 3 out of 10, but even during this season, the weaker points of the story are starting to show. Let me walk you through some of the problems from the current season, and you can be the judge of that. The widely popular Jeju Island arc is where I would consider to be the turning point for many people. At least it was for me. Let me tell you why. First off, let's address the elephant in the room before we talk about the arc itself. Jeju Island is clearly heavily inspired by the Chimera Ant arc in Hunter x Hunter. I don't think anyone would argue that. But enough has been changed where it's not a one-to-one copy. But since it is inspired and has some similar story beats, I can't not compare the two. I'm going to be transparent and admit that the Chimera Ant arc is my favorite arc in Hunter x Hunter. That being said, I'll put my biases aside because Solo Leveling has built upon the Ant arc, and there are good things that I think Solo Leveling has done in its version. I'm not going to turn this video into a full-on critique of Jeju Island, but instead use it to highlight why I consider this a turning point in the story and viewer perception, tying it all back to the honeymoon phase I was talking about. This place was teased very early on in the series, establishing it as a major plot point needing to be resolved. So let's talk about what was done well about Jeju Island. A popular critique of Chimera Ant was that it went on for way too long. To be fair, that is subjective and pretty split between the community, but there is an argument to be made, so it deserves a mention. By comparison, Solo Leveling was really concise with the handling of its Ant arc. The way the arc has been set up has stakes so high it feels like this is the end of the series or very close to it. At least that's what I was thinking when I was reading it, and also what the producers were thinking when adapting the show. The producer of the show is looking at a 2028 release for Season 3 because of that. Besides what I said about the arc resolving a major plot point, the studio also didn't expect the show to be so popular. The reason why Season 2 came out so quickly was because it was planned to be a 2-core release, and they just ended up naming the second half as Season 2. So they chose this arc to end on for a reason. So we've established that the situation is a big deal. The stakes are so high that it calls for the cooperation of the elite hunters from 2 different countries. These are S-rank hunters we're talking about here, the best of the best. We can quickly see how strong the ants really are and why the Korean S-rank hunters were unable to clear this dungeon in the past. The ants obliterated many of the Japanese hunters before the Korean hunters won a tough battle against the Ant Queen. But of course, that only led to the even more terrifying Ant King that had no problem dispatching the hunters. Everything up to this point was done pretty well. The tension and stakes are there, mirroring some of the narrative elements that made the Chimera Ant arc so successful, but in a more concise format. But here's the problem. If you're too concise, you can end up feeling rushed. And that's what happened here. I'm not saying longer is better, it's not about the length, it's about how you use it. What happens next with Beru and Sung Jin-woo is what made me concede to the fact that this series isn't driven by its plot, but by its action. It's not a crime for me to want a well-crafted story alongside good action, right? All that tension and build-up was over in an instant after Sung Jin-woo showed up. Thankfully, A1 Studios made some changes to the fight between the two that made it slightly longer and more interesting. The fight in the manhwa was not even close. Beru gets blitzed in seconds once Sung Jin-woo locked in. And that's where the biggest issue of Jeju Island comes in. The lack of meaningful repercussions. Moving fast is fine, but the way this situation resolved felt somewhat anticlimactic. Yes, the Japanese hunters suffered severe casualties and one Korean hunter died, but I don't think any viewer was particularly attached to any of those characters. Some of these characters were only introduced to us a couple of episodes ago. Our main character, on the other hand, even got an upgrade to his power instead of being at risk of anything. All of that solidified this arc as a turning point for me. I went into the rest of the series with a different mindset, focusing primarily on the action and just see where the story takes me. And if you are like me, I think you should do the same. Speaking of the rest of the series, after the resolution of such a major plot point, you can expect the story to slow down. And just like Sword Art Online shifting to Gun Gale, you can expect people to have an issue at the start of next season. You might be saying, slower moments are fine and having narrative storytelling helps the series. Well, apparently that's not the case. Remember the subplot with Sung Jin-woo trying to cure his mom? That episode with his mother getting better and the two finally being reunited has the most amount of dislikes probably out of every episode combined. So yeah, people have been conditioned to expect only action and aura from the show. All of that combined will probably mark the end of Solo Leveling's honeymoon phase. I'm sure it'll get a resurgence in the later part of the series, but I think the magic is starting to wear off like it did with Sword Art Online. It's not like SAO is doing bad. That series is still doing well in sales and ratings for its most recent releases, but it just wasn't as big as it was back in 2012. By now, I hope you can see how the trajectory of these shows are similar to each other and the impact both of these shows have made on their respective genres. Sword Art Online has left its mark as a pillar of the anime industry, going through both the highs and the lows. Solo Leveling is having its time in the spotlight right now, ushering a new perspective both for the Korean industry and for its genre. But will it stand the test of time and become one of the greats like Sword Art Online? Only time will tell. Until next time, Wong Diggity out.